Welcome back to episode number 7 on the wealth of self. Today's guest is Stephanie Sinclair Howard, someone I am honored to call a very good friend and someone I've gotten much closer to over the course of my time here. Stephanie's a professional photographer and a small business owner serving clients in and around the nation's capital. But her story didn't start out that way, of course. Stephanie's the product of a military household, with a mom and dad who both served in the United States Army. She was born in Georgia and spent the first year of her life there before her family relocated to South Carolina. This was an interesting move. It meant they were about 12 hours away from family in Chicago and roughly the same distance from the remainder of the family in Louisiana. And even though this meant a lot of car rides and getting to experience a lot of subcultures across the United States, there was still some geographic isolation from people who were very important to her. Stephanie was incredibly involved in high school, competing in marching band and even bowling, which carried her through her college career on a scholarship. But when she was about 18, she experienced something that was rather traumatic, the separation of her parents. This is a story many of us know all too well. These were the two people who had been there for her every step of the way, and to see them separated was devastating. It took Stephanie nearly 10 years to reconcile the emotions of that event. But through it, she persevered, and she's now pursuing a career that she loves with joy, passion, and creativity. And that's what we're here to talk about. So, without further ado, let's kick this podcast off with Stephanie Sinclair Howard. Welcome back from the intro, and we are right back here with Stephanie Sinclair Howard. I'm going to turn it over to her. I have to say, I've had the privilege of working with Stephanie on a number of occasions now, and it's been a joy each and every time. And I'm just excited for everyone to learn a little bit more about someone I consider a very good friend. So how's it going, Stephanie?
It's going, all is well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you had a little bit of a client conflict today, which is normal in the business world, especially when you're dealing with multiple things. How'd the resolution for that go?
We rescheduled.
Good.
I was like, I got somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
So let's reschedule. And thankfully, this was an easy client. So he was like, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So we're just going to push it on to tomorrow and business as usual.
Excellent.
At 11:30 a.m. tomorrow.
There we go. Most people are amenable. They understand that things come up or things change. And so long as it's not really locked in stone, you can usually make those pivots pretty easily.
That's it.
I have to say, I'm just honored. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. DC has represented it's an interesting time in my life where I feel like for me, it's been tough to make good friends and get close with people. Yeah. I think a part of that was the COVID thing, but
yes.
It's it's a big city and it can feel lonely sometimes. And
it can.
Just by, happenstance, we got linked up on, I think it was a Tolman shoot. And from that point forward, we've done a really good job of maintaining contact, and I'm deeply appreciative.
Yes. And now we can't get rid of each other.
Yes, exactly. We've hung out like 3 of the last 6 days, I think.
Yes.
Whether it was at the house for dinner.
Or family members
NBA
and
game
all
with
the
Michael.
things. Yeah, you and my husband have this bromance.
I'm liking it. It's amazing.
Totally cut me out, which is fine. I'm cool with it. But, yeah.
Well, I think when you start to get closer with someone, details about their life and their past just sort of naturally emerge. And that's always been a point of curiosity for me when I meet new people is it's like, how did you get to where you're at? That's something that fascinates me. And I think we're all on a very long journey.
That's it.
And who we're talking to right now, maybe, a 360 or 180 or whatever direction you want to go in the next couple of years. But I want to learn more about how you got to where you're at now and some of the events that really shaped you in your early life. because
Definitely.
those are things I've picked up on gradually, but this is a chance to really fully hear
Get into it.
hear
Let's
that
get
story.
into it.
Yeah. So tell me about your early life.
Oh, my early life. So technically I am a Georgia peach.
Where in Georgia?
Fort Stewart, Georgia, where nobody knows where that is. Only unless you're military.
Okay.
So that speaks to my origin. Both of my parents were in the Army. That's how they met.
Excellent.
Had my sister along the way in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure.
Wow.
And I got Georgia. How about that?
Continental.
No shade to Georgia, but I mean, it's not Hawaii. I'm just saying. So they had me there in Fort Stewart, Georgia, and by the time I turned maybe 1 year old, I was already in South Carolina, which is where I was raised for the next couple of decades,
Right.
Until after college and all the things. But South Carolina those are my roots,
Right.
and that's my stomping ground. That's what I know.
Yeah.
Although I have visited Georgia here and there, and I used to live there and closer to the Atlanta side, but Fort Stewart is just outside of Savannah. And yeah, so I had a really good childhood though. It was quite colorful and some highs and lows, but more than anything, I had a lot of positive experiences, and I think my parents raised us, my sister and I, to be quite well-rounded.
Yeah.
So
And reading through some of your entries, it sounded like you had a really storybook childhood, outside in the neighborhood, playing until the lights go down, with your friends.
Till the street lights came on.
Exactly.
Barefoot, running in the grass.
Yeah.
Came in itching because you've been rolling in the grass all day, playing in the dirt. So
seasonal allergies going on.
Yeah, just a good old Southern childhood. And my parents they're very vibrant too. So they would play in the neighborhood. It's like, for whatever reason, we lived at a corner. We lived at an intersection in our neighborhood, and we just had the largest backyard on the block.
Nice.
So 30 kids after school will come over to our house, and we're playing kickball with two adults, which are my parents. And
they're living it up. It sounds like it was a blast for them too.
Yeah, so it kept them in shape. That is for sure. We all slept well at the end of the night. But it was
the move up there, according to your parents, was it part of their career shift? Because with the military households, you're oftentimes moving all over the place. So.
Well, so they did move around a bit before I was born, but I kind of came right at the tail end. So they pretty much, my mom was already out at the time, and then my dad had just gotten out maybe a year or so before. I think he might have gotten out in 90, maybe 90. I was born in 89. So they were pretty much settling. However, there was a family house in Florence, South Carolina. Again, nobody probably knows where that is.
Florence, South Carolina.
The big city of, everybody loves Myrtle Beach, but nevertheless. So it's about 70 miles or so from Myrtle Beach, but that's where my family settled. And so that's essentially where they decided to do life and raise their family.
Yeah.
Very, very far from their childhood homes.
12 hours, you said, right?
12 hours north and 12 hours south. My mom is from Louisiana and my dad is from Chicago. So, South Carolina, it just literally was like a triangle.
That's a trek. And I think, as I've ventured up to Canada more, doing like car trips and whatnot, you get to about that 8 or 9 hour mark and you're like, it's time to fly.
And then the mood starts to shift and people's attitudes get a little short and you run out of snacks. It gets a little tough that last leg. But yeah, so we had a good childhood. My parents were very, very present, very, very active, very involved, just as involved as we were.
Yeah, it's so important. That's so important.
So,
well, when you talk about being as far away from family as you were, you have a unique situation where geography separated you. Yeah. When I think back about, my upbringing, I was born to parents who were significantly older than the average parent. And I was sort of in this phase where a lot of my grandparents were at the very end of their lives. Yeah. So it wasn't a geography issue necessarily, but it was a time limiting factor where I only had them for a couple of years before they weren't really a part of my picture anymore. Understood. So that same sort of isolation exists for both of us in some ways. And how did that sort of shape your early years? Because in a lot of ways, a grandparent or an aunt or any of these people are very influential figures in someone's upbringing. So how'd you deal with that?
They're the village for sure. So our parents, for whatever reason, they did not want to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So we flew nowhere. We drove everywhere, but
A lot of road trips.
Oh man, a lot. Now as an adult, I'm like, if it doesn't have wings, yeah, we need to reconsider. But yeah, so we would basically travel to Louisiana, spend summers at a time. So we would be in school for 9 months. We'll be out of school for the summer, and as soon as we're out, within a week, we're in Louisiana until the week before school starts back again.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
it was kind of like making up for lost time, but that I really appreciate that because it allowed for us to establish our relationships with them, to just become more well acquainted with the culture, because you got Southern culture, but then you've got that deep South culture too.
Right.
So within the South, there are pockets of cultures. You've got Charleston that has their own culture. Then you've got maybe Florence, or, then you got Florida down there, and then you've got Louisiana and Texas, and where everything's big. So, I think those were some of my best memories growing up as a child in the South, but also spending summers in the deep South, and making those connections. And then, during the holiday season, sometimes we will go up to Chicago, and
the big city.
In the winter and in the fall, that's tough.
Yeah, it's a cold place. People don't realize how cold Chicago
People
gets.
don't realize how painful
the
wind,
the cut
in Chicago is. The wind just hurts your body.
Yeah.
So it hurts your jacket. But that was also a part of my upbringing. So I would eat Chicago dogs up north, and
there we go.
boudin balls and meat pies and beignets down south. So, you just go with it, and that stuff helps to shape you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, going back to your parents, they were at the end of their military careers at that point.
Yeah.
A lot of people who are involved with the armed forces will conclude their service, and then if they're younger and they got in really young, they will go on to pursue what they'll call a second career in some instances. Were your parents in that boat, or how did they navigate the end of that period of their lives?
So they did, I guess maybe they probably took the second career path, I guess, just basically adjusting to life as a civilian.
Right.
But as far as their military career ending, it did end just shortly after I was born.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get a whole lot of that exposure. I do remember like the Army fatigue jackets and pants, and I was like, these clothes are weird. Why is everything so green and tan and brown and black and gray? And then I remember seeing a couple of the Army shirts, the gray shirts with just the black word Army across the chest.
Classic,
the chest.
right there.
Yep, coming out of the laundry, and it was like peanut butter, but it came in this brown bag, and I was like, that doesn't look like the peanut butter. Yes. And so it was like macaroni in a brown bag, and I was like,
wait a second.
I mean, the math is not mathing. Like, my macaroni doesn't come out of a brown bag, and it's already cooked. Like, what is this?
Those are calorie dense, though. Those MREs, those are serious business right there.
Yeah, I didn't take well to those, but I do remember my dad shining his boots and having this jar of black shoe polish, and this rag that smelled the whole house of chemicals.
Oh no, that stuff's strong. Yes.
He had those, or he had that. He had duffel bags. All the things. So, I got just a taste of that towards the end of his career, and didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I do appreciate the time that my parents served.
Of course. And it sounds like that conclusion of that part of their lives opened them up as far as their time availability to spend the summers down in Louisiana or go up to Chicago and these kind of things. And I think a lot of folks who are really heavy into their careers find that getting away from the job to make some family time is exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing in and of itself
Yeah.
that they were able to provide that for you and the other family members.
For sure.
So,
and they did believe in
yeah.
dropping us off too, child, because
Yeah.
we must have got on their nerves. But they did believe in dropping us off. See y'all in a few months. Y'all will be all right. And
See
we'll
ya.
come back like 10 shades darker from that good old deep southern sun. But yeah, good times, good memories.
Well, America is so diverse. You talk a little bit about how, you know, there are these different pockets of culture wherever you were visiting. And, you know, there are instances where people don't have those opportunities to go to the neighboring city or the neighboring state. You were blessed also in that way to get this exposure across the United States. You had Chicago, big city feel. You had South Carolina. You had Georgia, well, briefly, and then in Louisiana.
Yeah.
So what did you take away from that sort of across the United States, that exposure from all these different places?
Just don't be afraid to travel. And then the different textures and colors of America, just, you know, it's one country, but literally the cultures are so different. Just like how you said, there are pockets of these small little worlds within America. And, you know, it's the first time I was exposed to mountains. Yeah. You know, going up through Tennessee and Kentucky to Chicago, and then, you know, cutting through Atlanta, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a really big city," you know. So I got exposed to that. And then coming through Alabama and Mississippi, and then Louisiana. I mean, the first time I saw some very random animals that I had never seen before, like oh gosh, what are the hogs?
Boars, right? Hairy pigs, essentially.
Exactly, and armadillos. And
those things are invasive,
and they're
incredibly invasive species.
Yeah, I don't desire to ever interact with those.
And they're vicious too.
They are. They're rude. Yeah. They are.
Take out a leg if you're in the way. It's a dangerous animal.
But I was like, I don't know what that is. That's not a dog or a cat. Yeah, we're just gonna go this way.
Let's stay a little bit further away.
Yeah.
Well, inside of this also, you were in a developmental phase for you personally. You were also involved in a lot of extracurricular stuff. So as you progressed through your schooling range, you were in band, you were playing sports, you were involved in these outside activities. What were some of those for you? And it's a big time commitment. And it's a big time commitment, not just for you, but for the parents as well.
For sure. Every year I was in band and track and bowling. My parents were in band and track and bowling, and my sister as well. So she would do 4 years of band, and I would come right behind her and do my 4 years. So my parents got 8 straight years of being band parents, not just dropping us off at school, you know, and just keeping it moving.
Everywhere.
Like they were on the buses too with us. They were at the 12-hour, 18-hour day competitions with us too. They were in the sun handing out water and swatting gnats, you know, too. Like, so they really put in their time. Band also helped shape me though, because I had a band director that was quite influential. And very, very hard and very strict on us, but he was no nonsense, but he was very excellent at what he did. And he kept a lot of generations of students in line. It was one of him and hundreds of us.
It's a formative activity.
Yeah.
If you've got a good director and your school's competitive, it's serious business.
Yes, it is.
People don't think about it. You know, it's like the band kid sort of ideology.
Know, the band
it's kind of ridiculous because the schools that are serious about band are legit.
Yes.
They're good.
And they do not play.
No.
But music is a language in and of itself. So, you know, that I appreciate because that was like my first foreign language that I learned. At least I would like to consider. So band was a very instrumental, no pun intended. Band was a very instrumental part of my life. And then bowling. So here's the timeline. Band was 6th grade until 12th grade. But bowling was 6 years old until 22.
Right. Were you in school leagues for bowling?
Not high school. So there was a break there about 4 years because I couldn't bowl and compete. Right. Because band competitions and bowling competitions were all on Saturdays. They were both on the same day. So I had to choose, and that sucked. But then again, maybe it was best for me anyway to, you know, establish a new community of friends around me, and just to be social. So that wasn't a problem, but I was like, well, bowling I can always come back to.
Right.
I can be an old woman and still bowl if I wanted to.
Lifelong sport.
But I don't know how many 60-year-old women are outside playing playing an instrument. So I put bowling on pause because I knew that I can come back to it, and that's just what I did. But while I was in high school, you had one season where you were, I guess it was the fall, one season where you were marching and competing whatnot. However, during the spring, I was running track. Yeah. And so literally I put down the instrument and picked up a pair of spikes. So it was like alternating. And my sister did the same thing, alternating between band and track. So it was 8 straight years of non-stop for my parents. And definitely for my dad. He's the one who had got me into bowling, just being a daddy's girl and following him everywhere. That's how I picked it up. But it paid off because it paid my way through college, that part.
The bowling part did? Yep. Really? So there was a scholarship involved with your bowling activities. That is the first time I've ever heard about that. Yes, I'm sure.
It's the first time usually anybody that I tell has ever heard about that. Wow. So I did it for 3.5 out of my 4.5 years. Really? At South Carolina State University. Go Bulldogs. Wow. But yeah, so it was a thing. I don't think they have a team now anymore, but the sport does still exist amongst women. And yeah, we would compete against some schools up here past the DMV, like Delaware State and Maryland Eastern Shore, and they were good. Whew. But yeah, so I enjoyed it though. I did. That also helped shape my college career, which is another story for another day. But yeah, it was good.
Collegiate athletes, I always looked at them and thought they've got a really exciting 4 years here, because even at the lower level sports, they were traveling regularly, going out for competitions across state lines, across the country in some instances. And I went to a big school. I went to University of Missouri, 35,000, 40,000 student body, D1.
We had 5,000 students, that. Right?
But they had at Mizzou, they had a Quidditch league, right? From Harry Potter. Not a real sport. Wow. It'd be cool if it was. But these kids even were going to California to compete in a
it was serious business.
Yeah. So I always looked at that and I was like, that to have been involved a little more seriously in some of those sporting activities would have been fun. Not Quidditch necessarily, but
goodness gracious. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I would say that's definitely one of my highlights, I guess, as a student, because I was a young adult then at the time, but and I still am. Hold on, wait a minute. But but yeah, I enjoyed that season of my life. I established relationships and friendships literally that I still hold on to today. And that coach who coached me when I was 22 is very much still an active part of my life now.
That's awesome.
So, and she's still in South Carolina, but every time I'm in South Carolina, she knows.
Pay a visit.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Every time.
Excellent. Well, I wanted to shift a little bit. We've been very positive in our conversational topics up to this point, but there was one formative, instance when you were 18, you had a parent separation. There was a divorce involved there. And I have many friends who have had parents divorce, and I think every situation is different. Everyone handles that differently. Yeah. But I'm curious to hear your journey through that process, because it could be heartbreaking. It could be an alleviation of stresses in some instances. But again, I think it's totally unique for each and every situation.
Because, like I said, I had such a well-rounded and very loving childhood. It made it very hard for me, very traumatic. For me, I have a sister who's a few years older than I. She's almost 4 years older than me, and so at the time I was 18, she was 22. She was already a college student. She was already out of school, working on her master's and all the things. However, I was still very much in the thick of it, very much still present. With the divorce, actually having seen them go from married to separated to divorce, and to see that that was extremely jarring for an 18-year-old who was quite oblivious to probably what was going on, you know, behind the scenes, or just that it was some tension there.
That's all you had known up to that point in time. I mean, 18 years of your life you spent seeing that model.
But you're in a bubble, or at least I was. And maybe, you know, that was a good thing that my parents chose to shield me from that, or just as just another form of protection. Like, you know, if I were in their shoes, how would I want to protect my child or children from something like that? I would just keep life as normal as possible. You're going to still stay focused in your studies and your extracurricular activities. Do what you need to do to stay on the right path. And don't worry about any adult business. Possibly, I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I would assume so. But also too, I would just think that my parents handled it as best as they could. But although they handled it as best as they could, it doesn't take away from the fact that it was still very traumatic. It was still very jarring. And from that, it took me a long time to really heal, really understand and process my feelings and my emotions regarding the divorce. You know, my parents got the divorce, but I felt like I got a divorce too.
Yeah, you were right in the thick of it.
Right. Yeah. And my sister and I were in the middle. So it's like, you know, the parents, and a lot of times I guess people can probably relate when you're married and you have children and you decide to go your separate ways for whatever reason, that is, the children are now forced to be in a position where they have to choose and decide, not necessarily choose and decide which parent over the other parent for which they love, but you know, I mean, think about Christmas and think about Thanksgiving, think about holidays, think about, you know, like, oh, but then what if one moves out of the same city? You know, it's not like I can just drive from this house to that house and be there in 15 minutes, you know, but if there's a little more distance, geographically speaking, then you have to choose, right? You know,
I mean, you're immediately presented with all these conflicts that you really weren't even
It's like, I didn't sign up for this. So, but it's a real thing, and you do the best that you can. It doesn't mean that the days won't be hard, but you still love your family nevertheless. Right. You just have to redefine your normal. And so that's what my sister and I did over the years. We redefined our normal, and made the best of it. So. Well,
again, I think, you know, you look at the divorce rates in the United States today and it's staggering. It really is.
They're extremely high. And at that time when the divorce happened in 2007, it was still a little taboo. Yeah. Like, you could probably count on one hand how many people that you knew experienced divorce. Yeah. There were more of my friends whose parents were still married together. However, nowadays it's very, very different. Very different. It's almost like divorce is the new normal. Which it shouldn't be, but so nowadays the percentage of divorces are astronomical. Yeah.
And if you look back really far back historically, I mean, divorce was seriously taboo. It was something that you didn't ever discuss, you didn't disclose, and people would live their whole lives. I think people still do probably live their whole lives in unhappy situations just because they don't want to deal with that, you know, what you might call stigma, shame, whatever accompanies that kind of event. But, you know, I much like yourself, I grew up with a family, a mom and a dad who had what I always determined to be a very steady marriage, and it informed and continues to inform the way that I pursue relationships and think about the future of my life. When I think about, you know, my life with Cheryl, divorce isn't even like a concept in my head. Yeah. Does that mean it doesn't exist? Sure, it exists, but it's one of those things where I'm always sort of modeling behavior off of what I experienced growing up. So,
and that's great. And how long were your parents married?
33 years, I think. They married later in life. Yeah. But up until my mom's passing, you know, they were solid. Yeah. I mean, they bickered and whatnot.
Of course, because they're married. Of course, because we're human.
Yes.
But and my parents were married for 20 years, so I am grateful for that. And I can't I can't be like, I can't be mad at, like, I had both of my parents for 20 years, literally my entire childhood. So, you know, you take it for what it is and what it was, and you celebrate the moments that you had and the pictures that you have. That's why pictures are so important, you guys.
Yeah.
And then life continues to evolve.
It does. It doesn't stop. It stops for no one. But it's a good segue point, because the reason we ever even were acquainted with one another is because you're a business owner, you're a photographer, you're creative, and I'm interested for you to take us on that journey. You know, you're exiting college, you may have a degree under your belt at this point, but at a certain point in time, you have to take that leap of faith and say, I'm going to try and do this on my own. What did those critical years navigating an office job or a corporate space and then making that leap, what did it look like for you?
It was very short. I will say that I graduated in 2011. And I then went right into becoming a foster care social worker in South Carolina. And then from there, I got into higher education. And I did higher education for about maybe 3 years, if that.
What was your area of expertise there?
I was working in admissions. So I was the front door. I got to experience students or prospective students with their parents and mamas leaving their babies for the first time and dropping them off to college and all the things, and walking in the sun, showing them what the dorms look like.
So you were a college tour guide.
I was all the things. Like,
all the pieces are aligning. Your bubbly demeanor is absolutely spot on for a campus tour guide.
So I did tour guides. I admitted people. Some people had to be rejected or denied, or you know, of course. So that process, you know, it was a part of the process. I met some cool people. I met Felicia Rashad too.
Did you really?
I did.
Were you at your alma mater at this time, or you had shifted into a new academic?
So I had shifted. So we're going to speed pass social work or foster care social worker, even though that was in Columbia, South Carolina. That was cool too.
That was phase one. And then
that was phase one. And then I shifted to Atlanta, where I was working at Clark Atlanta University, which is another historically Black university, and got into higher ed and just, I loved it at Clark Atlanta. I loved it. And then I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Like,
it's a big spot.
It's a big colorful spot. Like, it's always something to do there. Now, consider, I'm coming from South Carolina.
Right.
No knock to South Carolina, but it's not the big city.
It's not Atlanta.
It's not Atlanta.
My experience with South Carolina is Columbia. And I mean, I think Columbia tends to be right in that middle zone, maybe middle to small.
Yes.
I mean, they've got the Gamecocks there, so it's a big college.
They do.
But
well, sometimes the college is the city.
Right.
So, but nevertheless, Atlanta was eventful, and I was only there for 9 months before I got promoted to University of DC here in Washington, DC. Then that was a major leap, because I had my sister with me in Atlanta. She had already gone before me a couple of years prior.
Right.
And also she went to school at another HBCU, Savannah State University. And she migrated from Savannah to Atlanta.
Yeah.
She was also in higher ed. So it was like,
you
my
guys
best friend is my roommate, is my sister. So, you know, thanks to her, she also helped expose me to life outside of Carolina, just to expand my network, expand my vision, expand my perspective of understanding that there is so much more to life than South Carolina.
Yeah. Once you break outside of that sort of bubble, there's the whole
like,
world out
it's
there.
It's a whole world out here.
Yeah. It's exciting.
And not just Louisiana and Chicago.
Right.
Like, so yeah, I was a tour guide, of course, and it's so fitting. You're right, for my personality. And I enjoyed that. But then I still stayed on the admissions side in a different capacity, kind of more on the customer service side.
I gotcha.
Once I came to UDC and working with University of DC, I did it, but I found that it wasn't quite fulfilling for me.
What do you think made you feel that way?
I I don't know, actually. I just didn't feel like this was it. And, and I've spoken to you so much about how God is my center.
Mm-hmm.
And, he does speak about how he creates this life for us to live abundantly. And I was just like, okay, well, Lord, am I living an abundant life?
Yeah.
This is like 9 to 5. I'm constantly in this DC traffic, which I absolutely hate.
Got to get a scooter, man.
And I'm super stressed out from the workload because it's just a lot. I'm making a ton of money, but I don't even have time to spend it. Like, I'm eating cereal for dinner. This is not the move. Like, this can't be your best for me. This can't be. So and it was work around the clock. I was taking work home. I was staying late. I was working on the weekends. It was definitely an experience that forced me to grow. So I don't dismiss it at all. I did also enjoy UDC. Please let me be clear. I also did enjoy it, but I did feel that there was a shift happening. Right. And with that being said, I decided to make the leap.
Yeah. That's a big one.
That was scary. To go from corporate, that was scary. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I was like, yep, the shift is happening, and whether I'm ready or not, it's happening. So I just leaned into it.
Hey, everybody. Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say thanks again for your viewership on The Wealth of Self. If you're enjoying this content, please give this video a like, and don't forget to comment down below if parts of this conversation are really resonating with you, or maybe even somebody you know. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and you'll be among the first people notified whenever new content is released. Additionally, if you'd like to support the Wealth of Self's mission, there is a Patreon link down in the description where you can become a monthly supporter. Behind the stories, there are a lot of cameras and lights and audio equipment and everything that helps these videos come to life. It takes a lot to run all of that consistently, and your support makes sure that we can regularly release these stories. Finally, if you are a photographer, or maybe you're interested in video production and you'd like to learn more about the equipment that we are using to document these stories, you can check out the kit.co link also in the description. Any purchases that you make there will earn a small commission for us to keep on telling these stories. So without further ado, let's get back to the interview.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what you have to do. Some people have said, well, you can't have a plan B, because that is an admission of the failure of plan A.
Yeah.
Not that that's a good strategy. I don't recommend people follow that necessarily. But I think when I reflect on my own journey into the creative space, it was this sort of longing for quite a while, where I was seeing these videos on YouTube, people traveling, making travel documentaries, travel vlogs, things like this. And I was just like, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
And it was this subtle sort of motivation that went on behind the scenes while I did the 9 to 5 situation. And eventually I was like, we got to make a move and try and make this happen. Yeah. And it was a slow process. It was strategic, at least in my estimation. But what did it look like for you? I mean, was there an interest in photography early on that was sort of like, I got to start to figure this out?
That I hadn't mentioned. I think my earliest memory of having been introduced to photography was probably when I stole my sister's toy camera. It was a Crayola camera for whatever reason why Crayola made cameras, and it was super colorful. It was red, green, yellow, blue, and it had film that went in the back.
So it worked. It was a real.
It was like a camera that was like shaped like a rectangle. So
like a crayon box.
Basically. And I was just like, okay, she doesn't want this anymore. I'm just gonna play with it. And so that's probably my earliest memory. However, there's a gap,
right?
And then I see myself in high school, and I asked my parents for a camera, and my mom bought me this digital camera, and I would take the photo, and it would pop up on the back of the screen, and I thought I was doing something, and the screen was like a half a centimeter long. So
that's how it starts, though.
But I was so proud of it. Also, too, I enjoyed like going to and from Walmart to the photo center,
Right.
To
The
like
little kiosk.
turn in. Well, actually, to the people,
Yeah.
To like, here's my film.
Yeah, you
It's
actually
like,
had to
now
interact
I
with a
gotta
human.
wait. Yeah,
Yeah. These days, you
a
just
human.
punch in the digital whatever.
Right. And I had to wait
spits
like
out.
2 weeks
Yeah.
until it was, and then he came back in this folder.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, then I got the little digital camera, and they just kind of grew from
Mm-hmm.
there. And then I got one in college. Once that first refund check came,
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh yes, upgrade. So we upgraded, and then I was like, oh, my birthday's coming around a year or two later. And I was like, they were like, what do you want? A new camera. You guessed it. So they just kept getting bigger and bigger and a little bit more and more expensive.
Yeah.
And so I just love the look of photography. I love different styles of photography, but I just didn't exactly, I certainly did not know how to execute that or manifest that.
Right.
However, it was always a little hobby in the background.
Right.
So now fast forward, I'm at UDC and I'm working a 9 to 5. And I'm just like, okay, a shift is happening. What is it that I can do? And I prayed this prayer. I was like, Lord, what is it that I can do for the rest of my life that I will just enjoy? Like, how is it that some of these people out here in this world talk about, I never work a day in my life because I do what I love every day. And I'm like, how can I be one of those people?
Yeah.
So,
and it's evident that you didn't feel that at the time. It was just not a part of your life.
Yeah. And so I was just like, okay, well, what is it that I can do? And God was like, photography. And I was like, hold on, Jesus, you probably didn't hear me. Let me
rephrase that.
Let me pray that again, because I'm certain that I didn't hear that. Because at the time, to my own ignorance, I was like, photographers don't make money.
Yeah. Was that a major concern going
they?
in? Was a financial instability of that field? Or, I mean, it can be very lucrative. It can also be a total pain in the butt.
It wasn't even a thought. It was like, is that a real thing? People really do that?
Yeah.
But we live in a world where we live in a media-driven world.
More and more.
We just don't realize, well, at the time, maybe it was just me, I'll speak for myself, but I didn't really pay attention that there were hands behind the camera.
Yeah.
That TV show you watch, somebody produced that.
Right.
Like those photos that you saw on the billboard, somebody took that.
Yeah. I
like,
mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And when you get that introduction, you get that little taste.
Yeah.
And then you dive down the rabbit hole, you figure out
It's
are
a whole new
tons of
world.
careers involved here.
Yes.
And they're big careers.
I negotiated with the Lord a little bit more, because I was like, are you sure? Like me asking God, are you sure? Just so, but certainly, and I prayed about it. He confirmed it, and I was like, okay, okay, so we're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to do this, but I'm still a little nervous, so I'm not just going to jump off on the deep end. I saved a little bit of a nest egg for several months down the road in regards to my savings, of course. And like I said, I was making the most money I had ever made. I might as well have just done right by it and saved it on up. And so that's what I did anyway.
Yeah.
And so when I walked away to nothing. I'll just be clear, because I didn't have a job lined up. I just knew that at this point, mental health is my priority.
Yeah.
My peace is very costly. And I have sacrificed that.
Yeah. Well, it's especially challenging when you're making that transition to maybe a little more of an uncertain scenario, because you'll hear about people who will do their photo gigs on the weekends or in the evenings after their jobs have concluded, and they sort of gradually, it's like an osmosis into a new career or something. Yeah. But you kind of went right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
And with the savings, though.
Yes. That's an important factor.
Like, this is a disclaimer. Don't just
there was
jump out
security there. Yes.
So yeah, after I realized I had been compromising my peace for way too long, I decided to make that leap, and that was terrifying.
Yeah.
it gives me chills just to think about it. Because I was very much in an uncertain place in my life.
Yeah.
I knew something had to give, and the shift was happening.
Right.
So I may as well lean into it.
Yeah.
And if I fail, then I can always come back to corporate.
UDC.
Yeah, maybe UDC. But I was going to at least try.
Right.
And so I applied to several different jobs. Maybe 90% of the jobs were higher ed. I can't lie, because that was where my comfort zone was.
Right.
It was extremely uncomfortable for me to apply to a job in a field that I had zero training, expertise in, like whatsoever. I am a hobbyist straight out the gate.
Yeah.
I don't even understand what all the buttons on the camera do
Right.
at this point. And depending on which day you catch me now, some days I still feel like,
Hey, well,
like that.
they keep on adding
Like,
more.
what
It's hard to
is
keep
that?
up.
Where did that come from?
Function 21.
Right.
Don't need that.
So yeah, I decided to make the leap, and I applied to a very small percentage of photography jobs. One of them called me back and said, "Hey, let's meet at Starbucks for an interview." And I was like, "Oh, this is scary." Okay.
Yeah.
And so again, made another tiny little leap, took another tiny little step forward, and I sat down and I had the conversation. They became, they experienced me and my personality and all the things that comes with that. And they hired me on the spot that day.
That's
and I was
awesome.
just like,
It's the power of a face-to-face meeting right there for
I'm
anyone
telling
watching.
you, and maybe coffee.
Yep.
So from there, that opened up a door to a 4-year journey of working for a school photography company.
Yeah. I never knew this about you. I didn't know you took that initial sort of pathway.
Yeah, I did.
But that's a big thing. You think about, and this is maybe an industry guarded secret, but the people out there who do like school photos,
Yeah.
and they do like an entire region, and they're the person that they go to for that. That's some cash.
Yeah. I was just like, if it weren't honestly for that job, I wouldn't have been as exposed to the DMV
Right.
as I am. Like, I couldn't tell you where Loudoun County was from Prince William, from Prince George's, and all the princes and all the things. And then you got Baltimore. Like, I couldn't tell you about any of those places or how to get there, or even just have a reference point as well as I do now, had I not had the experience of traveling up there.
Right.
And it was not limited to the DMV. I must say, I've seen North Carolina a few times. I've seen Minnesota a couple of times, and I'm trying to figure out why the heck was I in Minnesota, but I was in Minnesota where they have wild turkeys and all the things, and I was like, get me back to
Land
the DMV.
of 10,000 lakes. Is that accurate?
I'm not from there, so I'm not going to confirm that.
I'll fact check it on the screen.
Fact check that later. But yeah, so it allowed for me to expand, and the training was free.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I put in some work, like,
Right.
don't get me wrong, but I didn't have to pay to go to school when I have a job that has a whole training team that provided me with all the equipment. It provided me with all the training. It provided me with all the things, and it allowed for me a foundation to build a foundation. And so that's what I stayed in and focused on for 4 years, and then the pandemic.
Yeah. Hit.
But while I was working as a school photographer, it allowed for me to think deeper into the world of photography.
Right.
So now that I have my foot in the door in the industry of photography, what genre would I like to do?
Yeah, it's hard to niche down. It's really, there's so much.
It is.
There's so much.
I still don't know if I've really truly if I've truly done it right now today.
I'm in the
people
same
see
boat.
me as a wedding photographer,
Yeah.
so I'm just like, but what does this time next year look like? I don't know. I'm just an opportunity away. That's how I try to see it.
And you're doing more with headshots now, which is
I
a
am doing more with
whole
headshots.
market.
I'm doing more with corporate too.
Yep.
So I'm just riding the wave.
That's a step away from editorial.
Ride the wave.
Next thing you know, New York Times, Washington Post going to be calling you up.
Oh
hey,
my gosh.
Got a story. We need you to cover it.
Well, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I have a friend named John that I can also bring along.
We'll tag team this.
Oh, but we win together. But yeah, so I definitely looked deeper into the world of photography, different genres of photography. I learned that I am not as great at newborn photography as I thought that maybe I was. But, you just don't know until you try.
Exactly.
So from there, the pandemic then eventually happened. I'm in about year 3.5 or maybe 3. Maybe about 3. And the world sat down all at the same time for about 2 years.
Yep.
And so when I realized I had the gift of time and the space and opportunity to think, I really took advantage of that. And somewhere along the way, which I missed a step or two, I did create an LLC, which was Mini Crop Photography.
Right.
I started my business, but I mean, that's the easy part. You can spend like $100 in the state of Virginia to start a business, but growing the business is a whole nother thing.
Yes, exactly.
Nobody told me, but yeah, so I learned that on my own, mostly learning that I have to grow the business. And then that's where mentors kind of came into play later down the road. But then I also had a very good community of people around me that pushed me and encouraged me and believed in me, and sowed good seeds. My now wonderful husband, because I just got married.
Yeah.
He's over there.
He's literally 10 feet away. But that's something that you talk about with that first photography position, where a lot of people, I think, get stuck in the mindset that in order to become, an expert in a field, you have to go get a 4-year education, or you have to go to an accredited institution to learn a skill. And there's value in that. I have no doubt. I've done that. I have done that. So I know that there's value in it, both from an academic and a social perspective.
Yeah.
But if you want to learn something in today's day and age, you can go teach yourself that skill relatively easily. And through trial and error, you can get this thing done. So, I mean, you look at photography, you look at video production, they're more or less pretty technical fields. But there are people out there in the form of mentors, there are tutorials, there are articles, there's your own ability to go out and try something, fail, and pick it up again and try it another time. The ability to learn in this specific genre of careers is unlimited. And so that's a good point to segue into maybe a mentor of late that you've had. You've worked with some really stellar photographers in this region. That you kind of got to shadow and pick their brain a little bit.
Yeah. So for that, I am appreciative. One of my, and I can name them in order. It's only a handful. I can count on one hand, but they were solid, and they are solid people, and still very much present in my life. And I also learned through mentorship in this phase of my life that there are seasons, and the seasons do change.
Yes, they do.
Even for mentors that you try to hold on to for dear life, at least in that space. So you can learn, but at some point you have to execute. And so my first mentor, I found her on Instagram. She was this lady that was an extreme hobbyist. Her name is Sharon Bovell. And I was just like, I love your work.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we connect? And sure enough, we did. She has a at-home studio in her that was built in her garage at the time. And we would go or get together there and work until the sun went down. And again, rinse and repeat. And
all it took was a message, right?
That's
you just
it.
Sent that message, and that was the connection point.
Yeah. And yet again, that's another little tiny leap. That's why I said there are leaps within leaps within leaps. And so you have to put yourself out there and just basically get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Important.
So that's how she came into my life. I was like, hi, my name is Stephanie. I don't know nothing about a camera. Like, she was like,
don't worry about it.
She was just
I got
like,
you.
yeah, like, let me just take you under my wing. And she did. And she was the first one. And then after that, after a couple of years working very closely with her, I ended up meeting Laura Hatcher.
And you showed me her website just recently.
Yes.
Really awesome.
She's phenomenal. Also based in Alexandria, and she's physically like based in
very close to you.
Alexandria in Old Town. She does have a studio, and she's phenomenal. Ex-military, curls out of this world.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And she's expanding and growing.
She does good work. She
yes,
does good work.
she-
And vital
she
work.
does.
Work that people need. A lot of headshot materials.
Yes. And she
need.
specializes in veterans that are coming out of that world of the military and transitioning into the civilian life.
Yeah.
So y'all look her up if y'all know any veterans. And then from there, Myron Fields of M Fields Photography, who is my current mentor. And he's phenomenal, such a storyteller, and not just storytelling in the sense of putting words together verbally, but being able to tell a story in a frame of a photo.
Yeah.
And
that's a skill in and of itself. That's an art.
It's a gift.
A gift. Put any word you want on it. It's special.
Yes. And it's something that can be taught, I'm sure, but to have it innately and just naturally, it's like I can just sit and listen to him talk all day, but he does not have that time. But
Right.
it's just like anytime he speaks, I listen.
Yes.
Anytime Laura speaks, I listen. Anytime Miss Sharon speaks, I listen. Because you have to. And there were other mentors also in between those three. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, like these people they're regular everyday people with phenomenal stories and the heart to give, the heart to serve, and the heart to teach. Yeah. And so for that, I am grateful to them. And another photographer that's also attributed to my growth and expansion in photography is Daryl Todd. And he's also local to Washington, D.C. And everybody loves Daryl. So
next up is John Branch.
Next up is John Branch. John Branch, are you listening? Are you listening to this?
We have someone who would love to help you on your next assignment.
We need John Branch on the show.
Hey,
we're going to send this.
Awesome.
We're going to send this to them and let him know that we're fans.
That'd be great. For anyone watching or listening, John is an amazing wedding.
If you know John
lifestyle
Branch,
portrait photographer.
Tell him where to find us.
Yes.
Send this to him.
But he's close. That's the cool thing. But
Yeah.
you made a really profound point, and that was, when you're around these people who are acting as mentors for you, just be a sponge.
That's it.
Just soak it all up. I had the privilege of being on a call last night, a Zoom call. Totally random, but there was a gentleman on Facebook who bid on a job that I also bid on. And similar to what you did on this messaging system, I reached out on Facebook. I just said, hey, man, your website is amazing. You've done some incredible work. Could you spare 10 minutes and just hop on a Zoom call with me? Spent 90 minutes on a Zoom call with that guy. And he introduced me then into a group of other filmmakers, people who work as lighting technicians, audio technicians, so on and so forth, for major motion pictures. I'm talking big name stuff, and I'm just a fly on the wall. There was a gentleman in the call last night for 10 minutes straight talking about his experience working on set, and I swear I had to Google 15 or 20 items of what he was talking about. Just to keep up. What is that? That's his industry lingo. Industry lingo.
And they are dropping dimes like this. Like,
right, just knowledge bombs.
A lot of times I'm just like, I'm just going to listen and put my phone here on record because I
say that one more time? Yes, exactly.
Can't keep up with it all. Like, and I don't want to interrupt the flow or the momentum of what you're teaching to be like, what does that mean? Wait, what does that mean? Wait, can you Google that? Can you explain that? Yep. And then the path that you were on takes you down another rabbit hole just to catch you up to where I was. So,
and they're just chatting. It's
and
all
they're just
casual.
Chatting.
So
it's just in them.
And when you get to be a fly on the wall in that scenario, It's just being open to opportunity.
Yeah.
Being willing to say yes, being willing to work hard
Mm-hmm.
and go with the flow. And if you communicate your desires to those individuals along that path, things will open up for you.
Yes.
So, I mean, for anyone listening who wants to adventure into this creative space, just be receptive to, critique, to growth. Any of that stuff can really change your life on a dime. So,
oh man, talk about who you know and opportunities and the courage to say yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Vital.
I cannot even imagine the fact that I'm sitting here, on this podcast interview talking about my journey as a photographer. That is crazy.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
Just a few years ago, I was like, hi, my name is Stephanie and I'm a photographer, or I have this tool in my hands, or what am I doing with this?
You can say it a little louder.
And here I am.
Yeah.
Now I'm Stephanie and I have this tool in my hand and I'm, all the things. So,
well, if you had to look in the mirror, who's Stephanie? You think about the journey you've been on.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself now?
That is deep.
Good luck.
Thanks. Who is Stephanie when I look in the mirror? I am colorful. I'm vibrant. I'm eccentric. I am the manifestation of my ancestors' wildest dreams, if they had one like this. I'm a child of God. Ooh, this is giving me chills. Sorry.
No, it's good.
Yeah, I am a product of the I am, and I reverberate light and sound in this world. And I'm grateful for the space that I take up in this world, because somebody needs me to take up space and to do what I'm doing. I am a open door for the next Stephanie that's coming behind me, and I'm leaving it open for her to walk through. So it's not as hard as when I had to walk through it. And I'm a well. I am deep, and I hold a lot of love, knowledge, compassion to be able to give and to be able to serve.
Very well said. Incredibly well said. And as a final note on the wealth of self, this is all about discovering what we feel makes us wealthy.
Yes.
Oftentimes that is not financial in any way, shape, or form.
For sure.
That's family, it's community, it's different for all of us. But when you think about what has made you truly wealthy, what is it?
Oh, God. Literally God. God is my center, and I'm interconnected with him. And for me to be able to have relationships and love, creativity, to have the flexibility of freedom of time, that is phenomenal. Like,
yes, it is, yeah.
What 9 to 5? Like, but it is work, though. Don't get me wrong, because I did leave a 9 to 5 to go to a 24/7. But I would do my 24/7 any day before I would do a 9 to 5 again. I don't know if I can last a 9 to 5 right now, but nevertheless, I'm wealthy in so many ways. I'm wealthy in my relationship with God, my relationships with family, my relationship with time, that I respect time, and the people that have helped to shape me. I'm wealthy in that way because I have connections and just true, genuine relationships. Not that I want anything from them or they want anything from me, but it's just who they are and how they take up space in this world is complementary to who I am and how I take up space in this world. And so together we're able to create something beautiful that never previously existed. And hopefully one day I can be able to stand in that gap for someone else and pass that along.
Yeah. Well, you will, and you're already doing it. You effervesce positivity. It's just like
coming out of my pores.
It's amazing. Honestly, it's the quality about you that I most appreciate. You're just you radiate positivity, and you keep on doing that.
I appreciate it.
Of course.
I sure will.
Well, thanks for doing this. This has been amazing.
Yes.
I've enjoyed this. I got to learn more about you and all the different elements that make you who you are. So
Thank you very much for having me.
of course.
I am honored.
Thank you. Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in on this episode of The Wealth of Self. As always, your viewership is immensely appreciated. If you want to take it a step further, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you are among the first people to know when new content is released onto our channel. Additionally, this is all about hearing voices. If you have any questions, anything that really resonated with you during this episode, leave a comment down below. I'm very eager to hear your voices and your thoughts. Until next time, thanks for watching The Wealth of Self.